Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. On this channel, we discuss day-to-day problems people face in their lives. Let's start with the video. I, 53 female, have a biological son, Josh, 28, and a stepson, Tom, 25. I married my current husband, Steve, 13 years ago. My deceased husband left Josh and I well provided for. After his death, I placed the house under both mine and Josh's name. Steve and I kept our finances separate. Josh graduated med school at the top of his class and just finished up his residency. He married his girlfriend Leah after graduating from med school. Leah was left some money and a house by her great aunt. They started doing cosmetic upgrades on the house, but then found out about the electrical and plumbing issues. Leah learned she was pregnant about this time. Josh was working 12-hour shifts at the hospital. His shift ended at midnight. He was worried about Leah being alone in a construction site. My home has a self-contained in-law suite. I offered them the suite and finally told him that he owns half of the house when he offered to pay rent. Josh insisted upon paying the property taxes and insurance. Tom stated he wanted the suite after I told him and my husband that Josh and Leah were moving in. Tom has never paid any rent despite having a decent paying job. I thought my son's need was greater. Leah adjusted her hours to align with Josh's. She works remotely. She always prepares a nice light meal for herself and Josh after finishing work. She's an excellent cook. I'm not. Last Friday was the last day of Josh's residency as well as the last day of work for Leah. She planned to use paid time off until she gave birth. Tom has a new girlfriend, Bets. I don't care for her much. She encourages him to drink. Tom is not an alcoholic, but he can be a mean drunk. An incident occurred about 2 years ago, and I told him he would have to move out should it ever happen again. Typically, they go back to her place after trying one on, but last Friday, they came to our house and followed the delicious smells emanating from the suite. They burst in on Leah and demanded food. As she opened the fridge, Tom pushed her aside and began taking out the food that she had prepared. Beth started opening the basket of baby presents that her co-workers had sent. Leah kept asking them to stop. Tom tossed the cake she had made on the floor when he found it contained cherries. Josh arrived right in the middle of this. There was a huge fight which only stopped when Leah's water broke. He rushed her to the hospital, and 5 hours later, I had a beautiful baby granddaughter. Once Tom dragged himself out of bed the next morning, I told him that I expected him out in 30 days. He started shouting at me, saying that he should have been given the suite in the first place and not my precious son. He stormed out, and we have not heard from him since. My husband is very upset with me for kicking him out, citing my favoritism towards my son, that is giving him the suite, as the reason for this outburst. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. This particular event doesn't sound like favoritism. It sounds like you reacting to an escalated situation you have no desire to revisit. Original poster has been more than generous towards stepson for far too long. Even if Josh wasn't a part owner, it's clear he would be staying in the suite temporarily. If the stepson had that kind of space, he would never move out. Original poster, you're not the a-hole. If your husband can't get on board, it's time to evaluate if this marriage is worth the headache of dealing with a mean drunk for the rest of your days. Tom feels an enormous amount of entitlement to his stepmother's house that was at least partially bought by her first husband. With Steve, who's being a bad husband, father, stepfather, supporting him, that entitlement isn't going anywhere. So until you lay down the law, you're going to have to deal with a belligerent drunk who gets physical with pregnant women. Tom should be banned from the house until he apologizes to you, Leah, and Josh and gets help for his drinking. Oh hell no, not the a-hole. Tom and Bets are damn lucky that Leah didn't press charges for his assault. He needs to grow up, and your husband needs to grow up for enabling him. In my opinion, the husband needs to leave with Tom. Yep, assaulting a pregnant woman, throwing and ruining food not meant for them, opening presents not theirs. Gee, the husband sure is a piece of work trying to justify bad behavior. Does your husband know that Josh is actually half owner of the house that he and his son have been living in? Josh should install a lock on the in-law suite to keep out unwanted guests. I wouldn't even give Tom 30 days to find a new place to live. He hasn't been paying rent, so he has no tenants' rights. I would get security cameras installed as well if you have any concern about Tom returning in order to do anyone or anything harm. And if your husband doesn't like it, tell him he's welcome to join Tom wherever he ends up living. Not the a-hole. You kicked him out because he bullied a pregnant woman so badly she went into labor. It's got nothing to do with him being your stepkid and everything to do with his disgusting behavior. His father sounds like he's a huge part of why he's a 25-year-old moocher that refuses to grow up. If anything, you're doing more for his well-being by showing him the real world. How immature and narcissistic do you have to be to throw a cake on the floor that a heavily pregnant woman made just because you don't like cherries? Are you 12? If that's how he acts during the petty arguments, then good riddance. Not the a-hole. I would tell both your husband that Josh has a greater right to live in the house than either of them since he has an equal ownership interest in the house. Your husband and his son have quite the sense of entitlement. I would have evicted your stepson too based upon his unacceptable behavior. In fact, when they burst in on Leah, I would have called the police and had Tom arrested for assaulting Leah. Tom and his girlfriend for sure played a role in sending Leah into labor, and they should consider themselves lucky that the baby was okay. Your son should consider filing for a restraint order against Tom and his bike girlfriend. You have a serious husband problem. If he cannot understand that his son's behavior is unacceptable, I would show him the door as well. Next story. My 25 female, husband 25 male, and I have been married for 3 years. We met when my son 6 was an infant and have been together since. He has a younger sister that is 10. Since we got together, she has not liked me. She was very young at the time, but was instantly jealous. When we got married, she would make comments that all of his money goes towards us and she doesn't get anything she wants anymore. Every new year, she expects a new iPad from him for Christmas. She 1000% thinks my husband will be buying her a car when she turns 16. He has 2 other siblings, 21 female, 17 male, and very loving parents. Time has passed and we've had 2 additional kids, 1 female, 0 male. It's rare that we get to spend time with just the older son. My husband treats him like his own, but anytime I bring up taking him to do fun, he invites his sister. It was like this before we even got married. They like playing together even though she does say rude things to him often. My husband chalks it up to the age difference, but I don't think so. She has said multiple times to me that she wishes I only had the babies and not my son. She also makes comments about him talking too much or his speech issues. When we bring her along shopping, she always wants to go with me to look at her clothes. She tells me everything I've picked out for myself or my kids is ugly. She also says that it's not a name brand, so it's trash. We're usually looking for something specific and can't afford to buy her much. When we can't afford it, we get what we can for her. If we can't get her anything, she cries. She also makes comments that she won't be getting X for Christmas because I'm buying Y instead. We always tell her before she comes if we can afford to get anything and if we can, what the budget is. Our son understands, but she throws a fit every time and it ruins the whole trip for everyone. We recently planned a shopping trip since I need new clothes after having my last son. I was excited to spend the day out of the house, which is rare, and get clothes that aren't baggy. Our oldest was excited to spend the day with us. The night before we were going to leave, I found out my husband invited his sister. I told my husband, I'm either taking all 3 of our kids and going by myself, or she isn't coming. He said that she needs to come since her parents never take her anywhere and she needs to feel spoiled. I know this isn't true because she is given whatever she wants by her other siblings and her parents. They also take her everywhere she wants to go. My son cried too when he found out she was coming, so we canceled the trip. My husband insists it's typical 10-year-old behavior, but she is very mean. I understand her jealousy and have been trying to help her for the last 6 years now. Am I the a-hole for not wanting her tagging along with us everywhere? Every time she says hurtful things to me and my son. She does things with us anytime I get to leave the house, using a friend's account since my husband and I share one. Not the a-hole. Your sister-in-law shouldn't be making demands on your time, money, or family. At the age of 10, she understands that words have power. I don't understand why you haven't corrected her thinking. Your husband acts like a father to her. Why? His sister has 2 actual parents. If she wants an iPad, that's her parents' responsibility, not yours. That is unhealthy for her. She is both entitled and spoiled. Does your husband think that things are going to get better? You have 3 young children. Why would he take from them to give in to her frivolous demands and expectations? Yes, that is a husband problem. You have every right to have boundaries and space from his little sister. When are her other siblings doing all of these things for her? Sounds like she was the baby and spoiled rotten. Do you want your kids to learn this is a normal way to act? That you're okay with this behavior since they will see her get rewarded for it? Are her parents pressuring you to do all this, or is it just your husband? Either way, time to sit your dear husband down and have a long, serious discussion about all this. And what is your son thinking? Dad doesn't want to hang out with me alone. Only if his sister comes too. That is not good. Her behavior is not normal, and you both need to back away from her and let her parents be the parental figures in her life, not your dear husband. If all else fails, get him into marriage counseling and get him some good parenting books to read. Not the a-hole. I get that with the age difference, he probably feels more like an uncle or a second dad. But even my dad or uncles never spoiled me like that. Your husband needs to start making it clear to her that she isn't top priority anymore. That's you and the kids you're raising together. Siblings might spoil for a birthday or Christmas, if that's a big one, but not constantly throughout the year. She has parents, they can spoil her if they want to. If he keeps giving her everything she demands, all he's going to do is help raise an entitled adult, and the world will be a lot meaner about explaining just how much she isn't entitled to than he can as a sibling can. Time to nip it in the bud yesterday. This isn't normal 10-year-old behavior. She is spoiled. Your husband said it himself. Her dependency on him is also a little much. She is old enough to understand that he has his own family now. She shouldn't be expecting so much from him just when she has 2 other siblings and loving parents as well. But I can see why she does if your husband believes that she needs to feel spoiled. This behavior isn't going to improve as she grows up if she gets a free pass every time she acts out of line. She needs to learn sooner than later that she can't always get what she wants, especially at the ungrateful expense of others. Next story. Am I the a-hole for being upset with my father-in-law? Context. Grew up in foster care. Through foster care, I gained 3 foster sisters. I loved them to death and we're still in contact as adults. Husband and I have been together for 7 years. We recently moved back to his hometown to be closer to family. We're close to his family. It means I see my mother-in-law and father-in-law a lot more. My father-in-law is harder to get along with, but we've grown closer in the last few months. However, earlier this week, we had our first fight. We were spending time together as a family, including my sister-in-law and her kids. The topic of family came up and my 6-year-old niece asked me about my family. I told her I had 3 sisters and didn't go into any more detail. I don't want to explain foster care to a 6-year-old. My father-in-law was very confused and pressed me for more details. Despite the fact that he has met my biological mom and my foster parents and he knows of my sisters, even though he hasn't met them, I finally said that I had 3 foster sisters and he responded, "Oh, I meant real family. They're not real family." Now, I got very upset by him saying this. I had to excuse myself from the room and leave because I didn't want to cry and be upset in front of everyone. I had a really hard time sharing my emotions with anyone. Then my father-in-law was angry that I got upset and left the room. Days pass and I don't hear anything from him. I recognize that he didn't realize his comment was going to hurt me, but I thought once he realized he hurt me that he would apologize. That was not the case. My husband then asked me to talk to my father-in-law. I'm upset that I have to reach out after he said something hurtful, but I just want to put the drama behind us, so I go talk to my father-in-law. Not only does he not apologize, but he presses into the wound. He tells me that I don't have real sisters, they don't care for me, and that they don't consider me a sister. He has no idea that I still talk to them frequently. He's really angry that I got upset and left the room when he made the original comment. He thinks I should apologize and he tells me not to expect an apology from him. I'm now more upset than before. When I told my husband what his father said, he went to his father and they got into a huge fight. Now everybody's upset. I don't want this to be a big drama, but my father-in-law continues to insult me and my family, won't apologize, then gaslight and victim blames me that I'm the one who did something wrong. I explained to him that I left the room because I was upset and I needed space, but he's still angry with me. He's more angry that I got upset and called him on his cruel comments than he is about hurting me. Now we're at a standstill and my husband and I are just going to have to concede because my father-in-law will never apologize or feel remorse. My sisters are the only family that I got to have, and I don't owe it to my father-in-law to explain my relationship with them. You are absolutely not the a-hole, and your father's behavior is unconscionable. He doesn't need to understand the makeup of your family. You are his daughter-in-law, and he supposedly cares about you. All he needs to do then, whether he understands or not, is to respect you. Believe you when you say that this is your family, point blank, period, and be kind. He not only couldn't manage that, he has persistently tried to punish you. And why? Because you called your beloved sisters what they are? Because you cried when he hurt you? Either he is so broken that he is reacting to his own shame by lashing out at you because he doesn't know how to be sorry or acknowledge his mistakes, which sadly is the case with some older men who've been raised in deeply toxic masculinity. Or he is so lacking in empathy that he thinks that you not being okay with having your family dismissed and negated is somehow a character flaw. Either way, he's the one who is the a-hole here. Yeah, no, you don't have to concede. You don't have to apologize. You can call these 3 women you grew up with and bonded with your sisters if you want to, and it's nobody's business, and nobody asked your father-in-law what he thought about it anyway. You're lucky to have these women in your life, and you honor them by calling them family. If your father-in-law won't shut the F up about it, then he may have his opinions and bluster without you being anywhere around to deal with it. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. I have a hard time believing this is real because I don't want to imagine people as heartless and ignorant as your father-in-law exist. Do not fall victim to his gaslighting. He's a degrading a-hole, and your husband kinda sucks for not sticking up for you and asking you to mend a relationship you didn't break with an a-hole who doesn't deserve your reconciliation. I should clarify that my father-in-law sucks in this situation, but my husband absolutely stood up for me. He got in a huge yelling match with his father about it and is also very angry at his dad. But his dad won't apologize or have remorse. I can't ask my husband to choose between me and his parents, so if we want to continue to have a relationship, we're just going to have to move on and everyone will just have to live with the hurt, unfortunately. More context. Adding this comment for more context, we live in a tiny town of 5,000 people. We're extremely close to my husband's family. We all have dinner together multiple times a week. We've never spent a Christmas apart since I joined the family, and we moved back home to be closer to family. My father-in-law is about to retire, and that's one of the reasons we moved home, so we could spend his golden years with him. My in-laws have done a ton for us and continually support my husband and I. I confide in my mother-in-law and my sister-in-law. My father-in-law is the closest thing I have to a father. This is the biggest fight we've ever had, and I'm just in shock over it. My husband and I want to be a part of his family's life. Before this, I really respected my father-in-law, but now I just feel so hurt and betrayed by him. I knew my father-in-law was a difficult man, but I had no idea he could say such cruel things that he knows are hurtful and feel no remorse. I am honestly devastated. He will continue to be in our lives, but I will definitely be more closed off from him and my mother-in-law and will guard my heart and my past. Thank you for all the support and all the comments. He honestly had me believing that I overreacted and was being unreasonable.